I went to school for aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech and graduated in 1990 when a big aerospace crash happened. So the job opportunities in the aerospace industry weren't that great. I really wanted to do aerospace. I really wanted to get into the space field itself. And I figured through the military, I could probably do that and have a good opportunity still while the industry was depressed at the time. I ended up joining the Army, went into maintenance and logistics, but then eventually worked my way over to space operations. Got assigned there right out of Command General Staff College as a newly promoted major and started working in the space field, which is what I always wanted to do. I ended up competing for a position at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, Army-wide competition for one slot to go there for a year in civilian clothes. I won the competition, got to go there. I ended up working on 12 different projects, but one of the ones that I got to work on was NASA's New Horizons mission to Pluto. So I did achieve one of my goals.
Hey, welcome to the latest episode of the show. Today's guest is Robert Berg, who is a retired disabled combat veteran and aerospace engineer who turned to space operations consultant and award-winning creator of military space art and short films. Welcome to the show, sir.
Hey, thank you.
Absolutely. What's your story? I covered some high-level stuff, but I know that you seem to have a very interesting story starting with your Army career and then transitioning into the civilian world. So I'll let you share it in your own words.
I guess I could kind of give a history. I started off, I went to school for aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech and graduated in 1990 when a big aerospace crash happened. And my dad was career Army, and I felt the market for aerospace wasn't that great at the time. They had laid off a ton of Lockheed and Martin Marietta aerospace engineers that year that I graduated. So the job opportunities in the aerospace industry weren't that great. I had some opportunities for other engineering type things to do, such as one was designing fire engines. But I really wanted to do aerospace. I really wanted to get into the space field itself. And I figured through the military, I could probably do that and have a good opportunity still while the industry was depressed at the time. I ended up joining the Army, just enlisting out of college. Graduated top of my class in Intel school, and they sent me off to work with 5th Special Forces Group when I started as an Intel analyst. And that was probably one of the highlights of my career because it's a very different Army in the Special Forces compared to the regular Army. Spent just a little over 2 years there, and then went to Officers Candidate School, went into maintenance and logistics, but then eventually worked my way over to space operations. Got assigned there right out of Command General Staff College as a newly promoted major and started working in the space field, which is what I always wanted to do. In fact, my really high-end goals for space were to either become an astronaut at some time or work with NASA on some of their deep space missions. And actually, the Army let me do that. I ended up competing for a position at the Johns Hopkins Applied Physics Laboratory, Army-wide competition for one slot to go there for a year in civilian clothes. I won the competition, got to go there. While there, they kind of let you loose at the Applied Physics Lab and say, you can work on whatever projects you want as long as the project managers will take you on. So I'd go sell myself to different project managers. And I ended up working on 12 different projects, but one of the ones that I got to work on was NASA's New Horizons mission to Pluto. So I did achieve one of my goals and worked on a NASA deep space mission. So the career was very fulfilling overall. Worked a lot on the classified side because when it was Army space, I got out before they stood up the space branch as itself, Space Command there. So Army space was like kind of secondary in space to Air Force space at the time. But still, we worked a lot of the highly classified stuff outside of space operations as well. They kind of said, okay, space guys, you've got the clearances. We're going to have you work all this other special technical stuff as well. So that was pretty fulfilling as well, but it could be kind of grinding, or what's the term I'm looking for? A lot of technical detail in managing and dealing with highly classified material. So that can be kind of a drain on you. There's so many steps and things you have to do and precautions you have to take on a daily basis. So I'm kind of glad I'm not doing so much of that anymore. but it was fulfilling time. I did a total of 24 years and 9 months in the military. These people just rounded up, say 25, have time to last. But it was a good career to have. And now I'm enjoying retirement mostly with a zillion hobbies, anything from photography. I was doing classic car stuff for a while, doing some artwork. One of my pieces off to the side here called this Aurora Classified. It's X-37 space plane flying over kind of a somewhat destroyed looking Earth below. Got into some fantasy art as well. If a piece you can see right here was doing a cyber unicorns, kind of brainstormed this idea. I loved art all the time, but didn't have that much time for it in the military. So I started getting back into it after I got out and went to several conventions and ended up having an artist table for about 6 years at conventions. And I saw everyone doing kind of the same thing with like fantasy art or fan art, kind of doing their favorite superheroes and such. So I thought I'd brainstorm something no one had done, and it came a bunch of different ideas and started researching them on Google. And one was the cyber unicorn, which I thought, yeah, someone had to have done that. There's the robot game that was out there, the robot unicorn. So cyber unicorn was pretty close. I was totally surprised. I searched and could not find one artist depiction or one story anywhere about a cyber unicorn. So I jumped on it and started painting cyber unicorns and brought those to the conventions and sold for a bit. So enjoyable stuff, not really that much for money making, but something to enjoy in retirement. That's kind of where I'm at now with a very quick background.
Yeah, and I mean, great story. Congrats on the fact that you can do what you love and passionate about now after the retirement. But going back to the way you got into aerospace industry within the U.S. military, you said that the Air Force space was kind of a priority or on top of the U.S. Army space. Why and how did you manage to get into the space field through the Army? Because my first thought would be back in the day, Air Force would probably be closer to that. Now you have the Space Force, but back then, probably Air Force would be closer. Was there a specific MOS that you you had that helped you get into that, or how did that work out?
Degrees, I think, were the large part. So my bachelor's degree is in aerospace engineering through Georgia Tech. And then I got my master's degree in space science and aeronautical science through Embry-Riddle University. So that helped. And the Army space field was growing at the time as well. So they were looking for people to come in and expand some. The Air Force, yes, they ran most of the space operations. The Air Force had the launch vehicles, they had the satellites. But if you think about space in the military, who is using all the space assets? They're delivered and being used by and focused on the guy on the ground. And so the Army had a big part of looking at and shaping and changing a little bit on the focus of space, where the Air Force was focused on the launch and flying the satellites and delivering some of the space capability. And you really needed the ground pounder down there to give input and kind of tweak what space does to best support the person on the ground.
Makes sense. And when you joined the Army in the first place, you said that you were in the Special Forces. Was it somehow related to this field, or did you have to go through something different before you joined the aerospace field?
Special Forces, they used cutting edge technology at the time. So we did use a lot of space capability. This was like a 92 through 94. So I was with 5th Special Forces Group out of Fort Campbell, Kentucky. It was a great place to be. I was a very technical guy, so they trained me up in a lot of technical pieces of things to do. Ended up working out of a 2 shop for 2nd Battalion, but they would put me with a team when teams would do things. I got trained by the Quintillion Institute at the time. It was the people that trained the CIA to do kind of aside from the space stuff, to do lock picking and safe cracking. And I became the 2nd Battalion safecracker guy. So that was kind of interesting on a side thing there. And my technical side, having an aerospace degree and being good with computers, I ended up helping build their databases back at the time when we were running stuff off of DOS and different different time back then. Communications, of course, were a big thing, and there was some space-based communications capability that special forces use. But I think that didn't really play into getting into space eventually. The Army at the time did not have space enlisted forces, and you started in space as a major up to a certain point, and then started taking captains in and potentially younger later. So at the time frame for me was on promotion to major was my opportunity to get into the space field in the Army. Unless you did the side thing of an astronaut, that is extremely competitive. I have one friend who got to the final 100 and competing to be an astronaut in the Army, and he ended up getting disqualified medically um, due to he had micro tears in his brain from being caught in a few ID explosions, and that disqualified him. But otherwise, at the time he had become fluent in Russian, which was an important thing because we were flying up in the Russian capsules, and he was getting his master's. He got his PhD later, and he was a good candidate, but unfortunately, uh, getting caught in a few ID explosions and causing microscopic damage to his brain was a thing that disqualified him. But after I became a space officer is when I competed to go to Johns Hopkins and had the opportunity to work on the multiple different projects out there, including New Horizons.
So that's very interesting about becoming an astronaut. Um, through the army, does every one of them have to be from the army, or can you go to space as a civilian, or how does that work? Because, or are there any specific space missions that those people go as astronauts?
You're
Just
talking
for me to
astronauts
better understand.
astronauts in general then? Uh,
Yeah.
if if you interview my friend, he could probably tell you a lot more since he competed uh, to become an astronaut, and he actually worked down at Houston in control for several years as well, while he was working to become an astronaut. So he might be a good person to interview in the future. My side was more. I mean, I got a chance to do the New Horizons work on a NASA deep space piece, but the astronauts, there are civilian and military astronauts. On the military side, it seems there's a lot of Navy astronauts. I think a lot of pilots become astronauts as well, but very competitive field. And yeah, you've got civilians and military both.
Yeah, interesting. Let's talk a little about leadership. I know that I had a few guys from special forces, SEALs, Green Berets, and it seems like my takeaway from them was that the structure, the hierarchy is not as present in special forces compared to the regular army. It's more like a more collaborative environment, especially in smaller groups. Have you noticed that in your experience, and how your leadership style evolved in that environment?
It did influence me. For the first part, I was not a Q course guy. I was not a tabbed special forces guy. I was an intel guy assigned to special forces unit. But as you were saying, the hierarchy piece there, you're treated a lot differently, and people, I think, a lot more camaraderie and seeing the individual as a person and their capability versus so much on the rank structure. And as a young, new in the military specialist and then a sergeant, um, I, I felt that I was more of the team, and they treated me that way. Even the senior NCOs, the officers, everyone. So you felt more as a group and a team, less as I guess you could say, a peon. That maybe the regular military have that hierarchy is more of an importance in. It's just pushed more, I guess you could say. The special forces are more like a team environment where everyone worked as a team, no matter what level you were at. Of course, the senior people had the authority, but you felt much more a part of the team and on a similar level as a lot of people on a team.
And what about your leadership style in that environment and in general? Do you have some principles or a philosophy that you follow when it comes to leading other people?
I think that did influence my leadership style a lot. I was not a type A personality. I was maybe somewhere between type A and B or something else. And was always very concerned and looked out for my soldiers and would regularly talk with them. I wouldn't I wouldn't lead with a very authoritarian style, more with a involved style, I would say.
Hmm. And you know, another aspect of becoming a leader, or in general, rising through the ranks, and maybe in the civilian context as well, the way you learn, you grow is not without the help of others. And mentors seem to be very important in the professional development of many people. Did you see this? Did you have mentors who influenced you in the long term, or maybe you had a chance to become a mentor for other people?
Both were the case. I think a lot more of that as a young officer uh, in the Army, as a lieutenant and as a captain. The opportunities were there. And then later on, as a major, lieutenant colonel, I was more in staff type positions, and the expectations were already there for you. I think there was a little less mentorship taking place. And then being in staff type positions, I didn't have a large amount of people working for me as well. There were smaller teams. Still, there were opportunities to mentor, and there were a few people that I took on to try to help, and they were very appreciative with guiding them in upward mobility. But I think there was a lot less from the top down at that level for me at the major lieutenant colonel level.
All right. And the next question, and I like to explore this with many different people, veterans from NCOs to all the way to general officers, is how they went through this transition period from the military to the civilian world. And you've spent almost 25 years. It seems like you have a lot of passions in art and film industry, and you seem to have adapted to this new environment. But was it hard for you, and how this process went for you as a combat veteran?
I think a big part for me is I found a lot of technical passions and being a technical person. I shifted over uh, from the military technical side to applying that same passion to various parts of civilian life. Mostly on the hobby side, I did some contracting for the military for a while, a full-time contractor, and that turned out to be a lot like being in the military still. So I'm happy to have moved on from that, and now pursuing more of the hobby passions and doing a small amount of independent contracting.
Do you have some lessons that we haven't had a chance to talk about, but something that you want to share with the listeners? Maybe something from your military career, or something that you discovered after that or before that. Any pieces of advice for the listeners?
I guess I could share a bit of a story and how the military operated when I was in. I'm not sure if it's changed much. I'm assuming probably not, but I guess much like some of the corporate world, a lot of responsibility can be put on members of the military, and is put on members of the military from the lowest ranks. You're getting ready to go to combat, and being in combat is a big thing that the full time is being trained for. And you'll find in the military, say 1 up, 2 down for positions, which meaning that you can fill a position 1 up or 2 down. But in my time, I found myself, for example, as a captain, I filled the role of a lieutenant colonel as the G4 for 5th Corps Artillery when the Iraq war started. I wasn't supposed to, and I was doing that position. They brought a major in to do it, but then they let him go right before the war kicked off, going across the line. And I took over again as a captain and had the responsibility of lieutenant colonel for Corps Artillery at the start of the last Iraq war. And so anyone that's going into the military, and people that are there, you find yourself being pushed into positions and doing things where you may not have the training for. And so it takes a lot of inner reserve and capability. And I'm glad that I did all of that and spent the almost 25 years in the military. And seeing that and the way the military operates, that makes me have a lot of respect for everyone else that I know and that I know of that have been in the military. So for the people out there that maybe are thinking about going to the military, it can really shape you and change you as a person. It brings a lot of growth as an individual and your capabilities and how much responsibility you can handle.
All right. Well, that should do it. Thank you, sir, for joining me today on the show, for sharing the stories and lessons. Definitely very interesting. And yeah, appreciate that.
You're welcome.